The members of the Colditz Society are eagerly anticipating their trip to the castle. The group are honoured by the presence of ex-Colditz prisoner Peter Allen, his wife Runa, and Silke, wife of the late Oscar Dreiber. Silke is on a pilgrimage following her husband's escape route.
Does everybody like the new design of tree over there?
Oh, right, great, yeah.
Right, in your pack you've got the, which was in your air ticket, you've got the programme for today, which has been basically done by the mayor, but in fact with him I insisted that our tour goes ahead as a private tour, but we have certain official functions that will start the day. Now, they have created a living museum in the old Prominenti cells. That's through into the prisoners' courtyard and straight ahead. And the official opening of that exhibition will take place today at 9:30, so in about 40 minutes. In addition to the mayor of Colditz and various other local dignitaries, there are 3 people coming from Dresden. Now, it's quite, the ownership of the castle now is quite convoluted in that the castle is owned by the state of Saxony, is run by the museum directorate in Dresden, but the guides and the local guiding is done by the town of Colditz. So naturally they hate each other and fight each other. But we have 3 people, and the main one is a Mrs. Schubert. Also at 9:30 there will be the local press, and they will obviously want to get as much coverage, and the mayor will as well, because Colditz is in a pretty dire situation as far as unemployment is concerned. They've just lost another big building firm with 150 people, so unemployment is between 40 and 50%. So the mayor, A, will try and get as much out of it to get as many people to Colditz, and B, will help him when he has an election next year.
Come into my house.
Is this a place in the country?
Walking through the outer courtyard into the prisoners' courtyard, the group patiently wait for the German dignitaries' inauguration of the Castle Museum.
We used to walk around here and play stool ball, kind of.
Yes, all around here.
Kriegsgefangenenlager Oblag 410 hier in diesem Schloss. Aber die Aufarbeitung der Geschichte darf sich grundsätzlich nicht nur auf einen ausgewählten Zeitraum beziehen. Schlösserverwaltung möchte Herrn Berninghausen bitten, jetzt sein Geleitbuch zu sprechen.
Museum der Stadtverwaltung. Besonders beeindruckt ist man in der Schlösserverwaltung auch von dem großen Interesse, was die Colditzer ihrer Geschichte, der Geschichte ihrer Stadt und ihrer Region, der Geschichte dieses Schlosses und der Geschichte von Oberg entgegenbringen.
Now the speeches are over, Peter Allen is surrounded by people asking him about his memoirs.
Do you remember him?
Well,
Vaguely.
83 Jahre jetzt.
Whilst Peter intrigues people with his experiences, let us take a look in the museum. This was the accommodation for Giles Romilly, who was nephew of Winston Churchill was one of the prominente prisoners with the dubious privilege of having his own closely guarded cell. The room also contains artefacts from everyday life, such as the famous Klim tin and prison money known as Lagergeld.
Good resin syrup. And that's taken lye, I think. Sugar, syrup maybe. And lye, gold.
Floorboards, and then they found an escape tunnel under the floorboards, and we found a cover made from concrete. Today you can read the signature as Albrecht 1943. 2 German uniforms. Today you can see the 2 German uniforms inside the escape museum, inside the former bathhouse. And tailored by the POWs, but not finished. The POWs hidden the 2 uniforms in a sack, and they hidden the sack under the floorboards on the second floor of the cellar house.
That's the one they found the ship.
And we discovered the sack with the 2 uniforms on the 1st of October in 1997.
There are 2 different. The Colditz Society are people who are interested in historical things. The Colditz Association are the people who are here, the inmates. And we have a meeting once a year and one sort of meets up. There was one very nice captain called Puka. He treated the Poles or the Dutch or the Belgians or the English all the same way. And I was very sorry, you know, we told the Americans about him. We allowed him to keep his cider. You know, he was an honourable man, but apparently he went into Russian captivity.
Climbing up the spiral staircase, we make our way to the theatre, scene of much subversive activity. Notably, Airy Neve began his home run from under the stage.
And of course they went, came through the front of the stage as well, and then down here.
No, it was Airy Neve.
Airy Neve, yeah. They lifted it to the floor.
Yes, the corridor goes to German Tower.
So that was only opened up for week before this year. That was only opened up this year.
That's right. Oh, last year.
Last year.
End of
Oh,
last
99,
year.
sorry.
Yeah.
So 55 years, they knew it was there.
And the Germans covered the ceiling.
Yes.
But the restorer opened the hole in the ceiling.
In the end of this corridor, you can find the door to the end of the German bathhouse.
The Germans were playing cards there and they passed from there.
Airy Neve and Tony Lutane walked along this corridor, stood by the door and changed into German uniforms before proceeding into the German guardroom. They exited from the guardroom via these double doors, passing a sentry who saluted promptly, and walked down under the archway to freedom.
Yes.
This door, which was always locked during the war, has access to a little slit hole which can look into the Dutch buttress. This was the escape route of the Dutch. They dug a tunnel at the bottom and were within a few feet of getting out when in fact Eggers decided to do a routine search on the side of the castle, and he heard some noise in there and discovered the 2 getting out at the top and pulling up the rope ladder. And when he got back up to the top again to the Orions, they still couldn't get in. It was such a wonderful cover for the entrance to the tunnel. He still couldn't find it. And in the end, he heard the knocking to get them out, and they got out. That was the end of that particular escape. It was the nearest they probably got the Dutch to getting out via a tunnel.
So this is where your husband was trying to escape from. Let's see. This is where your husband was trying to escape from. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the open-air glider attic.
The famous glider was built in the attic behind a false wall. The intention was to launch it from the roof, gliding slowly down into the fields below, and then make a run for it.
Still doing the door. So there was a guard, 2 prisoners, another guard coming, Don Tom. Well, he must have done it here. How the hell I mean, it's high here. Anyway, how did he... Because he was very athletic. Yeah, because he grabbed that, and he grabbed that one. he grabbed the, and then he went right. They thought he'd go left, he went right, and he climbed, it was all barbed wire, and he climbed over there, and he got mixed up in the barbed wire.
Pat Reed's group made their successful escape from the windows above the flat roof. Despite the searchlights, they completed the risky crossing to the far corner of the Commandantur courtyard, avoiding the patrolling sentries.
He went out that side and then went under the bridge and out that way. He would have gone out.
Members of the group follow in their footsteps to the actual point of exit from the castle. Everyone was amazed at the narrow gap they squeezed through. So narrow they had to strip naked.
That's where they squeezed. Did they get through that? Yeah. Sorry, that's not got sound.
This was the route down to the park. The prisoners were counted 4 times. Once in the approach yard, once when they got to the park, when they got together again to come back, they were counted again there, and a 4th time in the approach yard when they got back. I don't want to criticise the Channel 4 programmes, the Win 4 programmes, but Alain Leray, it was Alain Leray came here, didn't he, to actually talk about his escape, and he talked about that particular door there.
Yes.
Now, who am I to say this, but I think he's wrong, I'm sorry. In fact, his own book says he escaped from that entrance just in there, at the basement of that building, which was used for housing NCOs and under-officers of the German Guard. So I think that is the building there, and that is the hide there, and those pipes go into it, as you'll see when we go down there. Pipes, of course, are DDR pipes, so they're post-war. That blockage there was not there. There were steps down there, and that's the route taken by Neve and Lutain and Reed, Littledale, Stevens and Wardle. They came down there from the moat area, and then, in fact, Pat, I believe, threw a couple of little cards down onto that area there to say what they'd done, so that when the next park walk went down there, the prisoners would actually pick those up or notice them and be able to tell a little bit about how they got away.
Behind there, right at the very end, where the screen goes, yes. So it was an archway.
Whilst there were many attempts to break out of the exercise area, we had to break our way in.
If you have a wife, you have no one. Yeah.
Obviously, the park where the prisoners exercised, technically the Germans didn't have to bring them down here because they reckoned that they could have enough exercise in the courtyard. But the prisoners pushed very strongly to have fresh air and ability to see trees, and they managed to convince the Germans that they wanted more space, and so they actually set up a park area here for exercise. The park, walk and the chapel were often used as reprisals by the Germans. If anything went wrong up there, they stopped them going to the chapel or they stopped them coming down to the park walk. And there was always solidarity amongst the prisoners. If the Dutch were not allowed down here, then nobody came down here. That was the attitude of the prisoners. This relatively flat area here was used for a kickabout, for soccer. And the park, then the barbed wire went roughly around down to those trees there, where there was the one machine gun. The one machine gun that the Germans actually owned was put on top of that mound down there, and there were sentries every so often around the barbed wire. And there was a big gate here, of course, through which they came and were counted for on the second occasion and the third occasion.
Well, you know, sometimes they had to sell some of their belongings.
Michael and I hope to say, perhaps were the first to actually dig this out a little bit in 1980. We came here in 1980 and we found this. We just saw a little bit of this and we dug it out to about 6 or 7 inches, and obviously it went right down into water. But this was the famous manhole with a wooden cover, which originally was just loose, but the Germans eventually decided this might be a problem area, so they put this bar across with a padlock. And of course this is the famous glass nut and bolt which Vandy made to replace the old one.
Probably grabbed on
stood there like this and threw him back over, like that over the wall.
And he made it a complete straight over.
Where he was catapulted over here, and then he picked that up and down here to attack the fire, then he climbed up the wire there using it, and over there, and away. Of course he escaped in shorts and singlet, and pencils.
No money.
Meanwhile, back in the castle, let's take a look at the chapel, scene of further escape attempts.
Ja, überall haben sie gemacht. Das sind alle Gegenstände hier, die sie benutzt haben.
Whilst we study some of the artefacts found in the escape tunnels, Peter remembers a famous cricket match when Douglas Bader was batting, enthusiastically sending the ball
through this window, which landed in the chalice of Padre Jean-Jean, the French padre. And he was all spilt with milk, and the Entente Cordiale suffered 2 days of not over.
They had to go back to tunnel digging, did they?
Yes.
The glass bit you just looked at in the corner.
Yeah. If you'd like just a minute's explanation, we're now in just about the oldest part of the castle. This is solid rock here, of course, you can see. It's about 11th century, this part of the castle. We decided that the best way to start a tunnel was, of course, from the top of the tower. So the tunnel started at the top of this clock tower, technically, and they got down through the central where all the guts of the clock was. It came to the middle of the tower, down to that air vent there, which was of course already here, and they came to this cellar, which is a wine cellar. They then drilled that way and concealed it with a wonderful sort of cantilever false entrance. They were largely undisturbed down here. The Germans didn't come down here that often to search. And then, of course, it went through there, then went straight up and went into the base of the chapel where we've just been. There was a guard down here one evening because they were searching another part of the castle, another part of the area over here, and he spent a long time and eventually worked out that there was in fact a tunnel entrance there. It took him about an hour to actually find it. and that's how they discovered the entrance of the tunnel. But it was the nearest thing to a mass escape. I mean, as I say, there was so much noise going on, and all the bags being taken up at night, and all the debris put up in the attics, that the Germans knew there was a tunnel here somewhere, but just spent weeks trying to find it. The French called it Le Métro.
And were you here right up until the...
Yes, I escaped in May 1941.
Really?
Top of that roof there.
I was put in a mattress.
We'll see whether a Dutch escaped as well. But you know, you had to have quite a head
And
fight.
quite amusing. The hardest thing of the escape is not to sneeze when there is straw up your nose. Then you give yourself away. And then the amusing thing, when the people had gone, I dusted myself down and went to the station, Colditz, and asked for a ticket. I had no papers and no Ausweis, but I had 50 Reichsmarks with me. And the man at the guichet, I happened to speak fluent German. I went to school in Germany before the war.
Really?
6 months, yes. And the chap at the guichet said, I said, Chemnitz, please.
Good.
He said, single or return, keeping a straight face.
Get everybody
I said,
off.
single.
Taking one last look around the prisoner's courtyard, having gained a small insight into prison life, we go home with fond memories of our trip, especially the anniversary dinner celebrating the liberation 55 years on. And so we say, Auf Wiedersehen to Colditz Castle.